Joining me now is Liberal Senator Dave Sharma, who was Australia's ambassador to Israel for 4 years. Dave, great to see you again. This is a dramatic escalation in tensions in the Middle East. Iran's supreme leader has already vowed severe punishment. What do you expect will happen next?
Well, look, I'd make the point that, yes, this is an escalation in tensions and activity, but a war has effectively been underway between Israel and Iran, an open war for the last 18 months to 2 years, and a covert or shadows war for several years before that. And Israel has clearly reached a decision where it's, decided that the advances made in Iran's nuclear program, continued stockpiling of enriched uranium, efforts to pursue weaponisation, a large ballistic missile program posed unacceptable threats to its continued survival. And so it's decided to act. Now, what we saw last night, I think, will only be the first wave of a number of attacks, because they're not going to be able to degrade or disable Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities in one wave of strikes. So I think we will see Israel to continue to strike Iran over coming days, and we will see Iran attempt to mount a response. Now, I don't know or have a good sense of how effective that will be.
Well, they've certainly already, it sounds like, taken out a lot of the top leadership of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards and the military chief. What sort of response do you think we can expect from Donald Trump in the United States? The US has made clear they weren't part of these strikes, but do you think they will get involved?
Well, look, they weren't part of these strikes, but it was clear that they had advance notification because they began moving non-essential personnel out of the region a couple of days ago. There's still a significant US military presence in the region. There's the USS Carl Vinson, an aircraft carrier battle group, and other assets. And I expect that if, clearly they will be using those to defend US personnel and installations in the region, but also allies, and seeking to deter Iran from widening this conflict by taking it to other states, attacking neighbouring Gulf countries, all those sorts of things. But beyond that, it's a little hard to say yet until we see how Iran elects to respond here.
What did you make of Foreign Minister Penny Wong's response? I played it a bit earlier. She's, again, effectively urging restraint, to both Israel and Iran, but we saw that kind of response after October 7 as well from her. And it comes after Australia, of course, sanctioned 2 Israeli ministers earlier this week. How helpful are these kinds of interventions?
Well, look, it's just sort of common diplomatic speak, but it's ultimately meaningless. Urging dialogue between Israel and Iran all sounds very well, but those two countries have not spoken directly for 46 years. They don't have diplomatic relations. Iran is committed to Israel's destruction, ideologically and politically. We have been trying a diplomatic track. The United States, the Trump administration, has had 5 rounds of talks with Iran, but Trump had indicated that his patience was not unlimited, and that if these talks had not made sufficient progress within 2 months, he would be looking at other options. Well, 2 months of those talks elapsed yesterday. We should not be surprised that Israel has taken matters into its own hands. It's been saying quite loudly to the international community and privately through diplomatic channels that if Iran's destabilisation, its pursuit of nuclear weapons, its support to armed terrorist groups was not dealt with diplomatically, it would do so militarily.
Very hard to deal diplomatically with an enemy that wants your total destruction. And as you say, they haven't spoken for more than 4 decades directly. Let's move on to the PM's trip. And speaking of Trump, Albanese is currently in Fiji. He's off next to the US and Canada for the G7. And he's hoping to snag a face-to-face meeting with Donald Trump. Maybe that's even more unlikely now, given what's happening in the Middle East. But if he does manage this, what do you think should be top of his agenda?
Look, I think top of his agenda should be making the case and getting President Trump's personal buy-in to the AUKUS program. The acquisition of those submarines, nuclear-powered submarines under the AUKUS program is vital not only to Australia's security, but it's also vital to the stability of the Indo-Pacific, and it's vital to the supporting a forward US presence in the Indo-Pacific. So I think making sure that President Trump is aware of that program, the benefits it brings to the United States and Australia, the shared endeavour that it represents, and how significant this particular project is to Australia, I think is a message that needs direct communication from the Prime Minister.
Well, hopefully he'll get that opportunity in amongst everything else that's happening in the Middle East and domestically in the US. Dave Sharma, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thanks so much for having me on.